Because if they're in green.
Very good work since,
I was
Fall in
surprised
there,
to see.
maybe. What is that, Spartanburg?
well, it's good that,
Far side of Atlanta.
that I still.
60 minutes or more travel to work.
8% of
Man,
it.
We're live.
so
I was just shocked
I mean,
that,
yeah.
that
We're
10th of our
live.
population.
I know, that's what I mean, like, that's because what's more than 60 minutes from here? Spartanburg or Atlanta, right?
Well, you'd be amazed how many Westminster
Being done. That's right. There are people that live up, and there are people that live in La Jolla.
Okay, guys, we're live. I'd like to call this meeting of the Oconee County Planning Commission to order for Monday, July 15th at 6 p.m. Our first order of business is invocation. Ms. Lyles, if you will, please.
Dear Lord, we just come to you today, just thanking you for this day, Lord. Thank you for the sunshine. Thank you, Lord, for taking care of all the people that the storm just passed by, Lord. We just ask that you be with us through this meeting. Just let us conduct it in a way that will be favorable to you and be favorable to the citizens of this county, Lord. Just let us always put ourselves in each other's footprints, Lord, and consider what the other person would be going through before we make laws, Lord, or ordinances. We just ask that you be with us through this, Lord, and just help us to always keep in mind each other. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Mr. Alex, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Okay,
Big crowd.
we have public comment for non-agenda items. Mr. Barnett?
Little bit of both. I'm Jerry Barnett. Was born and raised here in Oconee County. Greatest generation were my mentors and school teachers. So you can imagine where I stand. I stand on the rock. Ever since the beginning of time, man has tried to control man by different means. Caveman used a club. A little later on, they used bows and arrows, crossbows, and then the Chinese developed gunpowder. So they started blowing each other up. Now, the weapon of choice, it seems, is government, local government. NGOs and special interests are lobbying to rob a free society of its birthright. And I'm a little fed up with it. And the rural community of this county is kind of fed up with it. All you gotta do is circulate amongst them. I'm one of them. And somehow this government of the people, for the people, and by the people is gonna have to be recognized as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett. All right, I need, you have the minutes of the last meeting for 7/12, 7/1, 2019. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So move.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any corrections or? Okay, not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, I will now open up the floor to Mr. Mike Smith on the transportation discussion.
Well, want to talk about transportation element for a minute, but before we do that, let's take Jerry's comments to heart, and I want to make a motion that we include the Bill of Rights in the comprehensive plan.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I think it's a great idea.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
After reading the transportation element in the text version of it and spending some time with it, I raised some questions about C funds, and then we have other group of money that's controlled by another organization, and the millage funds. Tom brought that up, and by gosh, it's out there. And I had talked to Adam in private that maybe we needed to ask Cheryl and Carol to go back and see if they can't do a little bit better research on the millage discussion and be sure that that's included in that element. And also maybe detail a graph or a chart to show that, okay, we've got C funds here, this is where they come from, and then we've got millage funds, and this is where they come from, and then we've got another area of money that the state has, and show that a little bit better than what we have. What we have is one part of it in the first part of the element, another part of it in the back part of the element. We need to put them together so that you can see a flow through there. From what I understand about the millage money is we have X number of dollars accumulated in 1 year. It's not quite enough money to repair a bridge. So the second year they get some money together, and then by the third year they've got enough money to repair the bridge properly. But then the engineering may be a little bit out of date, or perhaps the transportation or the traffic has increased or decreased at that point, so they have to go back and do re-engineering, and it runs the cost up a little bit more. And I think these things need to be brought out in that element section, and maybe Cheryl and Carol could go back and spend a little bit more time on it. Because transportation is one of the subjects that comes up all the time in these focus groups in various means or ways, whether or not it's bicycles, whether or not it's width of the roads, repaving the roads, whatever. That's my comment about transportation.
All right.
If you all would like that done, just like we've done, if we had the element in front of us, I think a motion and a vote to adjust the transportation element as per what Mr. Smith said would probably be appropriate, versus it just being an act of one planning commission member.
Do you want to make the motion so that we know what you said?
I don't know, that's a
On the
long
record.
motion. That's going to be the world's longest motion, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, let me try it. Let me take a stab at it. I make a motion that you ask the authors of this text version to try to include the millage discussion and to group the sections together that deal with roads and bridges, and to create a chart that talks about the different three sources of funds, who controls them, etc. Period.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, I'll vote for it.
Okay, well, let's move right on down to I have my papers all mixed up. All right, let's go into the comprehensive plan. First, we'll do the public speaking, Mr. Tom Markovich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I am Tom Markovich. since y'all just covered the transportation element, I want to add one more thing on transportation. I missed it the last time. There's certain parts of this stuff I read real fast and other parts I slow down for. But I caught it when I was reading this because this element says that we've got about 9 miles of Interstate 85 in Oconee County with 4 intersections, and I really don't think that's true. I think we've got about 4 miles of Interstate 85 with 3 intersections. And so I went back to look at the transportation element to see what it said, and it said we had about 8.7 miles of interstate, and I don't remember how many intersections. So anyway, that needs to be fixed in those elements. Now, concerning the economic development ordinance, I read this with a lot of interest because to me, there's one major industry that is not even mentioned in this document. That's the retirement industry. And it is by far the largest industry in this county. No question about it. And it has been for a very long time. We produce more in retirement housing and have for many, many years than any other sector of the economy here. You can look at these numbers and you can just take the charts. You can take the annual the property tax assessments and look at them. Compare your owner-occupied residences at 167 million versus utilities at 173 million. Well, you would think that maybe utilities was bigger than housing, right? These are assessed values. So when you divide the assessed value of the utilities by 10.5%, you come out with about $1.6 billion in investment. When you take owner-occupied that's assessed at 4%, you come out at $4.176 billion, 2.5 times. That does not include the homestead exemption factor. There are 9,000 houses in this county alone that get the home that are 65 plus. 40% of all the housing in this county is retirement. When we take and put numbers into a document like this, they really don't mean a lot if it's just numbers. Without the analysis that goes along with it, and if you haven't been a factor or part of this economy in this county, you're going to miss things. Because you can't take one specific piece of it and attribute and say, well, so much of the healthcare industry is retirement, so much of the food industry is retirement. It's a piece of every bit of it. It's a piece of every bit of retail. But when we have by far the highest percentage of retirees living in this county than any other county in this state, and have for a long time. The retirement industry is huge here, and it really needs to be recognized. When we look at specific capital investment, we look at these different companies who've invested, I praise them. I mean, we need manufacturing, we need agriculture, we need all these things. And they invest hundreds of millions of dollars. But I can tell you this, we did a study in 2006 at the Home Builders Association at a time when this county was looking at putting a moratorium on housing. That 1 year alone, we built $200 million worth of houses in this county. 200 million in 1 year. Now, granted, that was pre-recession, and we had a couple more good years after that, and things did slow down and have not ever gotten back to where we were. But if we don't account for the retirement industry in this county and the economic development element, then we just got blinders on, and we need to fix that. Mr. Smith has said several times that he'd like to see dropout rate addressed, or some sort of an education factor addressed in the comprehensive plan. And I'll be honest, I think the economic element is probably the right place to put that. And and more so than the dropout rate. Dropout rate for Oconee County is roughly 3%. Somebody might take that dropout rate and say, well, if only 3% dropped out, then 97% probably completed. And that would be a wrong conclusion, because that's not how they come by those numbers. And in fact, they will report for the 2017 year that the completion rate was 84%, 84.1%. I kind of question even some of those numbers, because I would have to go, they changed the formula for how they come up with these numbers. And so I'm not really sure it's really truly, you have to take the 8th graders and compare them to the 12th graders. That's the only way you get a true look at how many people really completed high school, because you'll get things, you get anomalies. 9th grade is the perfect one. There's more people in 9th grade in South Carolina than any other grade, okay? That's because they fail a grade and they end up being there 2 times. When I was on this special commission for the state, at that time there was roughly 50,000 students per grade, K through 8, 62,000 9th graders. And that's because they're going to end up failing in 9th grade, repeating it, waiting until they're 17, because you cannot leave the school system prior to 17. Mandatory, compulsory attendance, not education. We don't have compulsory education, we have compulsory attendance. And so, anyway, I have a lot of data on education and that whole process of people completing high school, and I will sit down with Adam and them and share it. But to me, this idea of education attainment really ought to be in, if it's going to be anywhere in the comp plan, it really ought to be in the economic development element. And then there was one other thing in the goals. I'll be quick. In the goals, there is a goal number 4.3, and it talks about increasing business and commercial activity in priority areas. And it really kind of delves into the idea of coordinating with and working with the municipalities and downtown districts and things like that, which is unquestionably needs to be a paramount goal. And one of the things it talks about is establish a county-wide loan pool in partnership with area banks focused on downtown revitalization. I can't say more about that. That is a really important thing, and there are many areas who have put these loan pools together. They've been very successful, but another group that needs to be included in the accountable agency is ACOG. ACOG needs to be involved in that. They have vast resources to be able to work putting together loan pools. That's all I got. Thank you.
Where were you at on that, Tom?
That was on page 39.
439.
4-39, goal 4.3, 4.315.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Tom. Public outreach update.
Certainly. We had great turnout at Salem on Thursday night. Thursday night? There was like 35 people there, I think. We had, they really showed up. Like, City of Salem really showed up. Mountain Rest was great too. Had a lot of good input in Mountain Rest. We've got a meeting this coming Thursday in Westminster, the following Thursday in Fairplay. One at the Depot, one at the Oakway School.
Center.
Yeah. So if you can make it, great. But Salem really showed up, and everyone showed up from the City of Salem essentially, which was great. So if you all can make it to any of the next 2 meetings, that'd be wonderful. And what's going to happen is after our last meeting, we're going to lock ourselves in a room and kind of go through all the input we've got and see what fits where. See, okay, has this comment been addressed already? Put it in one pile. The other pile is this hasn't been addressed, and then we'll present it all to you. But the stuff that hasn't been addressed, we'll try to work it into some kind of edible format for you all, not just my scribbles. So that's kind of the general plan. And then so that's what we got.
Okay. And we'll move into the executive summary update. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, we met again, and we have now started putting pages together, coming up with priorities, 1, 3, and 5-year priorities, and we are going to meet next Thursday at 9 o'clock in the morning in the conference room if anybody wants to come in there and go through it with us. We're at least starting to put pages together and starting to put some text on the pages, a vision statement, some challenges to overcome, etc. We're moving forward. We're out of the starting gate. So next Thursday will be our next meeting at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Any comments? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
What time did you say, 9 a.m.?
9 o'clock in the morning, yeah,
In the conference room, correct?
conference room. Bring your own coffee.
Okay, let's now move into the economic development element review.
So if I may, Economic Alliance was incredibly helpful. Jennifer Hartman and Emily Hodge and Morgan, everyone was very helpful in helping assemble a lot of this data. And so if you all would like to, again, just like the other goals, you kind of start at the end, look at the goals section if that's what you all choose to do. But yeah, this is a very interesting read if you all have had the opportunity to look at it.
I got a question. Text. I have a question on the text. Turn to page 4.4, 4-4. And I'm looking at that table 4-2. Am I missing something here? Somebody explain this to me. Do we not have the non-residential group in this base category, or is that included in another category?
I had the same question.
Oh,
And
good.
I'm assuming it's in the owner-occupied, but we've defined owner-occupied on the previous page
We have.
versus non-owner-occupied. And so on one page, it's defined differently.
Well, that's what drew my attention to it, was I couldn't find the non-residential because they're taxed at a different rate.
Where did I put it?
On page
So when
4.3.
when you read 4.3, that first paragraph, it says the ratio is 4% for owner-occupied principal residence and 6% for other non-principal residence uses. So they've separated out principal residences versus non-principal residences. But then when you get over here, owner-occupied, the previous page was under principal residences.
In other words, that's a big group.
Well, and I'm guessing that they're both mixed in, but it sure be nice that they're, for
Split
them
it
to
out.
break it out. Because that does also speak to the point of, I mean, it speaks to the point of that second home property owner.
So you think they're both in the owner occupied? You
I think
that's
they're both
been
falling
combined?
under that owner occupied right now.
I think that should be separated too. Is there a way to do that?
Do we need to make a motion for that, Adam?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I get wrap my head around it. Going,
So look at 4.3, middle of the first, or that paragraph under property tax base.
got that.
For residential uses, the assessment ratio is 4% for owner-occupied principal residences and 6% for other non-principal residence use. So 6% for secondary homeowners, 4% for primary residences. But it defines owner-occupied under the 4%.
Would that also include, the 6%, would that also include houses that people have for rent? Where are those from?
Non-owner occupied, yes, that would be non-owner occupied.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're not-
they give dollar
not
figures for one set of categories, and they give a different set of categories for assessment rates. If you just look at table 4.1 and 4.2 and look at the base categories, they're just different. And you can't compare apples to oranges.
So we have residential real, under table 4.1, we have that same breakdown. We have the the table form of your narrative that you just read above it, right, Mr. Johnson? All right, and so you want to see that represented in table 4.2.
Yeah, I think 4 point, as Mike Smith said, is missing that.
Non-residential, if they're included in the owner occupied, then they need to separate that out.
And if not, they're missing it altogether.
Yeah, it's either missing altogether or it's lumped in with the owner occupied.
All right, if you want to motion vote that, certainly that would probably be the most effective route.
I'd like to make a motion that the consultants review table 4.1 in the paragraph referencing above as it relates to owner-occupied principal residences versus 6% for non-principal residences, as it compares to table 4.2, which only references owner-occupied.
Gotcha.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Do we also need to add the retirement as a base category in table 4.2 and get the assessed value of that?
That, I mean, if I may, I don't know if there's a separate category yet, if there's a separate category for, I don't think it's broken down, I think we can, adding to that table, I don't know if we can do it, but we can certainly add it somewhere, definitely.
Could you break them those with the homestead exemption? I know that includes some other people, but
Right, the general 65 plus and military and disabled or military disabled, things like that. So we can certainly pull that out as far as like looking around lakes. I think I made a map for you, Mr. Johnson, about last year. I didn't give a full analysis, but I did make a map, so it's definitely doable.
Yes.
Okay.
And so you want to add information regarding the retirement industry in Oconee County?
Yes. Do we need a motion?
Yeah, I was going to do that. Keep it all the same.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Does that need to be broken into retirement principal residence and retirement second home?
I don't know that they can, I don't know if the county has that data.
Right, because I'm thinking that because the assessor just takes black and white data, retirement industry may be a different, because we're not necessarily 65, I mean, granted 65 plus is a homestead exemption, but people may retire before that. I hate to exclude people who would, skew that number out.
Well, maybe that we just identify some of this retirement as an entity.
Well, all these homes would already be accounted for in either owner-occupied primary residence or in second home, without mention of whether the people are retired or not. If you're gonna break out the retirees, you got two brackets there.
Right, but right now, the county collects either at a 4% rate or at a 6% rate, so that's an easily click of a button to glean that information. But to say how many of those people are over 65 would, from a county level, may only be through a homestead, and not everybody would necessarily have qualified
I
to do that.
expect I'm not the only one here in this county that's over 65 and still work.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's not a button you can click on the computer to get that information.
I don't think that is a number that you can put in this chart, because if you do retirement as a separate line in this chart 4.2, it's going to be representing other lines in the chart again.
Exactly. No, and I don't think it should be put in the 4.2 or the 4.1. I think it should be referenced, and I think we should discuss with the consultants how to reference that as an impact, because for several years now, we've been rated as the #1 place in South Carolina to retire. And the last report I heard, number 15th place in the country to retire.
So you're just saying add it in the text?
Add it
not in the
somewhere
chart.
somewhere in there, but not in the chart, because you're right, you would be duplicating lines that already exist in the chart.
So you need another motion, Adam?
I think the motion is still there. This is just a discussion of it, sir.
Okay.
To add retirement as in the
an
text. I think that was
somewhere.
initial motion. motion.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So now do we need to move into the goals and objectives on page 4.37? Goal number 4.1.
Not as fast as you.
So, and I may be wrong, and I definitely am, this is an area where I feel like that there are much better experts than myself with groups that already exist in some of these stakeholder groups. So I'm hopeful that the consultants have put information directly from the stakeholders into here, and that hopefully this becomes a short meeting in that regard, because I sure don't want to override if there's a need that exists.
If I may, the brown text is, that is Control C, Control V, it's copy and pasted from either the OEA or ACOG or things of that nature that exist for the, from the upstate, from the OEA and from the ACOG, as far as their economic elements for their various, from their various plans. Now, but we can certainly add or modify or whatever you'd like to do, but I kind of agree with you in certain, we had to pull a lot of this information, so if you notice it reads a little differently as well, some of this information came from other sources.
In reading through the goals yourself, the only thing that I would think that I would be willing to speak to would be, is it the county's job to jump into some of these areas? In other words, have you read items that says, oh, the county's going to do this, and the county doesn't even have any responsibility or say in it? Are there areas where we have tried to put in goals that we really don't have any accountability or ability to even address? Does that make sense?
That's interesting. Nothing jumped out at me, although this has made its rounds from specifically the Oconee Economic Alliance. Looked at this before I showed it to you all, and they felt reasonably comfortable with, wherever it says Oconee County there, it could have read OEA, but since OEA is underneath the umbrella of the county, is why it doesn't read that. So I feel pretty comfortable in this at this juncture. If anything jumps out at anyone, or if through the further, because this is the first time anyone's seen this, if something jumps out, we can certainly always address it again. But I know nothing inherently jumps out as something that we couldn't put our hands on as a county.
Okay.
So, Adam, because the OEA is under the Oconee County umbrella, we don't need to worry about putting that down as an as an accountable agency, is that correct?
That's correct. I specifically removed that reference out of there because, like for roads and bridges, we didn't include the roads and bridges department.
Yeah.
And everywhere, just the county as a whole, kind of keeps it that way. But we could, I suppose, if y'all want to.
ACOG for that. As accountable.
4.3.1.5, is that weird?
Yeah, I think that, the one at Tom.
At ACOG.
On, strategy 4.3.1.5, on the, accountable agencies, adding ACOG in that list.
Where the heck are you now? Yeah, point to it. I see it.
It's on page 39, first block it.
Goal 4.3. The one that Mr. Markovich was speaking about earlier, adding ACOG to the accountable agencies on that one particular one.
So we moved through everything all the way over to page 39.
I mean, unless somebody sees typos, unless somebody is way more up on economic development than I am, I'd rather leave it to the experts to not second guess what they've requested.
I think maybe that goal 4.2 might be where we put in something about the completion rate. I don't know whether that's objective 4.2.1 or 4.2.2, but that seems like the place to put that.
See, Keep going, Alex. Keep
I
going.
mean, those two are pretty similar. One is employer satisfaction with workforce readiness. The other is raise income and earnings potential, which I think, that they would fall into either one of those. I don't think it,
I like it.
probably employers is probably the employer satisfaction. That would probably be maybe a little bit better. Because did we put that in the other as a strategy, or did we vote to review that? I know it came up, and I think we may have put it in the,
Was it in one of the other elements?
Not as a strategy or goal,
Okay,
as
okay.
information was
Okay.
requested to be placed in there, in the body of text, that we can certainly, I believe it was community facilities, community facilities, I believe, because that's where it was placed, but it was the body of text, not as a strategy or as a goal. If we want to look at increasing, a strategy of increasing high school completion, or a strategy of attenuating the dropout rate or something like that, right here, we can certainly do that here as well, if that's something that you all would like to do. Or you
I
could,
think that is a good strategy under the,
Let me jump in. Putting together this executive summary, we're seeing a repeat of some of these strategies, which is fine. It just reemphasizes that this is an important strategy. So if you want to put it in here, let's do it.
all right. Well, I'll make a motion. We put, it would be strategy 4.2.1.3. And the wording of that may be off, but, Gwen may have to step in here and help me with the wording, but, to work to increase the graduation, or completion rate, that's what it is, right?
And I would even venture to say, including alternative credit sources, because I'm reading in some areas, for example, students who might be interested in a career in horticulture, who might do a landscape business, they should be allowed to receive credit if they're helping senior citizens do yard work instead of doing PE. Maybe they can play basketball, they would rather be out mowing somebody's grass for senior citizens, and that's a good civic thing, as well as a good, it assists with the senior citizens, it assists the young person to get, skills, obviously. So we're to include the high school completion rate, including, work to improve, including alternative credit sources. Is that okay?
work to improve or increase.
Work to improve, let me say improve, because I don't know how much it can be improved if it's 80-something%.
I'll amend my motion to what Gwen said.
All right, we have a motion. Need a second?
I'll second.
Got a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay.
I want to, would everybody take a look at right above what we just included, 4.2.1.1, and the one right after it, .2. They look very similar to me.
Yeah, and training, comma, including apprentice and internship opportunities, and then blend them together. I would agree with that 100%.
Anybody else? Obviously, we need a motion.
Yeah.
Gwen, do you want to try?
Yeah, I'll be glad to, I would like to make a motion that we merge 4.2.1.1 with 4.2.1.2 by listing robust apprenticeship and internship opportunities as part of the training programs to align workforce development with the needs of targeted industries. How's that?
Glad it's recorded.
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry.
We have a
I'll
motion
second.
and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Yes,
I
sir.
mean, for accountable agencies, for both the last two votes, what would we like that to look like? Just use what's already there for 4.2.1.2?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
you got everybody in there.
I feel like we're missing, once again, a golden opportunity here as an accountable agency with Clemson. Why are we not including them? Just because they're not in our county, or?
Clemson University?
Yes.
Sure. Clemson University, man.
You want to put them in there as an accountable
Please,
agency?
yes.
How
And
can
that
we-
is a vast
But
pool
how
of
can we
people
make,
there.
how can we make Clemson College accountable to anything that they don't want to do?
We can't make any of these agencies accountable to anything
Well,
that they
but
don't want to
I'm
do, because the
saying-
majority of them aren't even Oconee County agencies. ACOG is a statewide agency, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Make sure we.
You're doing a good job.
Motion, vote that. If we just motion and vote, I mean, we could probably just make it one, as far as accountable agencies and adding Clemson University as an accountable agency.
I make the motion to add Clemson University as an accountable agency on 4.2.1.1.
Second.
Do we want to put it as just that one, or do we want to ask the consultants to potentially evaluate it for any that might apply?
I was gonna
Yes.
say, you might ought to look at some of the ones further down too.
Yeah.
Any that apply makes that a great.
I mean, there's going to be tons in agriculture and everything. I just think that they're not looking at Clemson when they're doing all of this. I don't think they're looking at Clemson.
That's
Because especially when it comes to the agricultural element, that is a huge resource that needs to be put in the agriculture. Because we work hand in hand with them.
So you got the motion.
And it's as a revised motion about any of the categories, not just the
Yes.
4.1.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? All right. Anything further in any of the other goals?
The only other thing, somewhere back in something that I read, they list biosciences or bio something, as one of the career clusters. But then they leave it out of this one, 4.2.2.5. Add defined career pathways for existing and projected opportunities in sectors including, no bio anything in there. So I'd like to make a motion that we add biosciences or whatever the one that they've already referenced as a key somewhere in
It
here.
is biosciences. It's in 4.1.1.5.
I would like to add that, biosciences. So you would take out the and hospitality and then put and biosciences.
So I have a motion. Second.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
Only at 0.6. Sorry. I pass.
I want to say kudos to the staff and the consultants for this particular element, because there are only 2 items in black, which came from the current comprehensive plan, with lots of new goals and ideas incorporated here.
All right, go ahead. Mike.
Oh. 4.3.2.1, it's on page 39. It's in red. I was wondering about, in the second line there, towards the end, it says, process to include permitting. I was going to say process to incentivize permitting and inspections. In other words, the concept is, hey, we'll help you get started, we'll help you along, and what, as an incentive to get you going, we will make the inspections or the licensing or whatever is required a little bit smoother for you. I was just going to substitute words there.
I don't know if.
Is that not what
I
it
don't
says?
know
It says we're going to assist in clearing key steps in the startup process, including permitting and inspections, licensing, and eligibility for state and local incentives.
I think if you put incentives instead of include, it's almost like you're showing, you're gonna do something different in the permitting process.
Not a good idea then, is that what you're saying?
I don't think so.
Just go ahead and say it.
Just,
I think it says what you want it to say, Mike.
I think incentive
Sounds a little
means
shady.
we're gonna give you a little bit of a break on your permit, like you don't have to actually go by the same rules as everybody else, is the way incentive sounds to me, if you put it in there.
It was just a try.
Adam has something.
Yeah, my only input with that is that the fee schedule for the permits is voted upon in June by council, so that's law, so that we can't really change that on a case-by-case basis. Of course, there's FELOs or fee and load taxes, things of that nature, which we certainly can incentivize. So if you would like for our incentivization process to be further like goal-oriented or strategized, we can certainly do that. If that's something that you all would like to look at, I think.
The only way that might make it read a little easier would be to, instead of say to include, say including. It's got a lot of ings in there, but it more clearly says what Mike wants it to say, and I think what it does say, it's one of those dangling participial phrases that you need.
Get into that.
You are including permitting and inspections, licensing, and eligibility for state and local incentives.
I will drop that suggestion.
Okay, is there anything further on page 39?
We have talked about the internet before, access to the internet, and they're in some different elements. We keep hearing about it when we go to these focus groups, and I'm wondering, since this is an economic element, do we need to include that here, or do you feel like we've covered enough in the other elements? If you go to some parts of this county and they ain't got the internet,
In that, explore the benefits of certified connected community. Does that not include the internet?
Probably.
I know exploring it doesn't exactly sound like you're going to work to get it in there, but until we take the tops off some mountains, that's just going to be a long, slow process.
Can we just make a side note for council that as we go through this next step where you're going to lock yourself in a room and go through all the ideas, that be something that you really focus on, that area? Where is it in our future comp plan? Internet, where is internet covered in our plan?
It
And
has
is it-
certified connected community, like italicized and capital letters. Is that some kind of committee or something?
It's a
I was asking about that too. I
brand
don't know
kind
what
of
that
thing.
is.
It's a proper, here, I'll bring it up right here.
I feel like we should
but
know
you all
what
can't
that
see it.
is.
Yeah, it's increasing broadband use and access across the state. That's not it, is it? Wrong website. Yeah, it's like, give me a bee city or an agricultural city or a tree city. That's the first metaphors that are coming to mind.
So we want to be labeled a certified connected community.
It's a proper name, that's why it's bold and italicized. And I just updated my computer and it's not available, sorry.
A lot of visitors to certain areas in this county are probably complaining about the connectivity, but the people who live there don't want the infrastructure to make them connected. I know, like, up in the mountain areas, they don't want cell phone towers, messing with their view and stuff. Well, then you can't really complain about your service if you ain't gonna put the infrastructure in to fix your service.
Well, when we were up there in Salem, they were really complaining about the internet service. And the only place that they can really reliably get it is the library because of the fiber system that they've set up. So,
So then you gotta tolerate a little pain and either have a cell phone tower or we gotta do some cabling or something. I mean,
the way they were talking, they were willing to take a little pain, not a whole lot, but just a little bit.
Just a
Just a little bit. Well, I think we'll hear about it in other areas.
From talking to people, and something I don't think about is, I mean, you all who employ people know this, but E-Verify, you can't run a business without the internet. That doesn't, and if I've run, a lot of the poultry systems have some internet components to them, or you need some
Yeah.
communication.
yeah, for security, we have to have either phone line or Blue Link or so that we can,
So it's,
our
the
security
internet impacts
systems.
way more than getting on Instagram and Snapchat. It's very like our economy, so putting it in the economic development certainly makes a very valid statement that it's important for the economy of the county.
So you want us to make a motion to add it in somewhere in this, or is it already in here and just not clear?
I think the connected cities or connected community, it speaks to that. But as far as where we put more information, I can certainly add more backup information and more, if any goals that pop up, if,
There probably needs to be more detail than just that identified statement or identified category.
I can certainly look into that and see what, other than more internet, what people said. Better internet, things of that nature. But yeah, I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I never thought about, I just didn't think about it from an economic standpoint, how much internet is necessarily needed for businesses to run, so.
Well, I know the schools are requiring kids to come home and do homework on the internet. Well, all kids don't have access to internet.
They all have to go to the library.
Well, they don't have a way to a library. I mean, a lot of them out our way, you gotta go all the way to Westminster to a library or all the way to Cincinnati to a library. And, there's spotty service out our way unless you can afford to have cell phone internet, and a lot of them can't. So they're requiring these students to do things on the internet but aren't giving them the tools to do it. And they're held accountable if they don't do it. They do get, if they can't get on the internet and research whatever they're supposed to, then they get a failing grade. And so we're failing those students.
Not only us, but the school board.
So is there a map that shows who has internet and who doesn't? Or,
As far as our fiber backbone goes, like probably find that map. As far as internet availability, because there's the satellite and then you can use
Cell
cell
phones,
service and I don't have a good map. I'm sure any major provider just shows us completely covered.
yeah,
But-
well, I would just think it's an easy way to compare. If we had it in the plan 10 years from now, we could
Yeah, they do.
see what it looks like
Like
now.
percent internet availability, I'm sure there's some
Yeah,
study out there.
I don't know.
I would think One Tone could probably give you the best.
And do we have available, options that would be available to lower income individuals? Do we have affordable options? Because like satellite, I wouldn't consider affordable for a lot of families. That's not an affordable internet option. So there's a lot of families out there. Do we offer something affordable in this county?
I think there are cell phone options, but I don't know.
There are cell phone
I was
options.
gonna say, I know a lot of kids that you would not think could afford it, but they have cell phones that are internet accessible.
This is what I love about this process. Like you all just, this is great. Like same thing with community meetings. It's great. Like the stuff that people come up with is just great.
It's limited, but it's there, so.
Thought about that. Yeah, I can certainly look for stuff, see what's available out there. I mean, it's a necessity. It's like water and sewer. I mean, it's a necessity these days for a lot of people.
Can I bring up one thing that I want, since we've already done the housing element? as someone who is currently trying to find affordable housing for someone in this county, it is not out there. If you are starting out, there is nothing out there for someone starting out. So they've got to go outside this county unless they have somebody to help them. I mean, it is unbelievable, the small amount of houses that are under $150,000. And there's a lot of people that cannot start out with a $150,000 or more mortgage. You know, somebody coming straight out of high school or, straight out of college, they can't afford those things. You've got basically the rundown housing in Seneca and the rundown housing in Westminster, and that is your only options. So that is something this county really needs to work on. Or we're dead, because as the older generation dies out, everybody's moved out of here because they can't afford to stay. I'm sorry.
It's all right, I'll get over it. Did you direct them to Habitat for Humanity if they have some kind of work, you'd be
No,
surprised.
I'm talking about somebody that's,
Wants it right now.
that's working and wants to make it on their own, just wants to, buy a house to start out. There's no first-time buyer houses out there. There's no affordable housing for people just starting out. Unless you're, making $200,000 a year and can afford a huge mortgage. I'm talking average housing.
Okay, with that, do we have any old business?
I've got a question back on our economic element. Page 436, table 421. The fourth element down. The last sentence in that, I don't understand what it wants to say.
The County Chamber of Commerce one, sir?
It is South Carolina Research Authority, SC launch.
It's 36, I'm
The
sorry.
last sentence is the number 2 spelled out twice,
2-2.
and then participating industry in Oconee County. I'm sure there's a typo there, but I don't even understand what is intended by that sentence.
Well, it's not actually a sentence, it's problem number one.
I'll certainly look at that. Sir, thank you for catching that.
Good job.
You're gonna replace Tom. You know that? Who's your replacement here, Tom?
Anything else? I'd like to remind everyone of the 2 meetings that we have left in Westminster on the 18th at 6 at the Depot, and the 25th at the Fair Oak Youth Center at 6. So, have any new business? If not, I hear a motion to adjourn. Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.